usually with some of the smaller FS1 shows or a few pay-per-views, it always turns out that the show they claim is not exciting turns out to be a great show. It just happens that way. So I welcome that talk whenever I hear it, because it makes me know that it's going to be a bigger show than most people think. But, you go down the list, and I'm just going to start off real quick. Paulo Costa fighting Johnny Hendricks. What an Adonis that Paulo Costa is. He looks like he walked off the Mount Olympus and came down into the octagon. He looks so much bigger than Johnny. Johnny took a lot of shots. People were texting me saying, why was it stopped? Why did Johnny stop it? Big John, that is. TJ, Johnny Hendricks was talking to Big John, not even knowing it, remembering that he was hit so many times.
Right.
So anybody that, after the fight, and that's not inside information. I mean, it's just right there. I was right there just watching and listening. Anybody that says that Johnny Hendricks' fight was stopped early is not understanding the fighter's safety that's needed. And just the reaction of Johnny Hendricks saying that after the fight, great stop, Big John McCarthy. Welcome, Paulo Costa, furthering your career in the octagon, and Johnny Hendricks being the warrior is will continue too. But Scotty took a lot of shots.
Yeah, let me
Jorge
just say,
Masvidal and Steven.
Hey,
go ahead.
Just let me quickly say something about Hendricks here. The reason I think people are saying that why was it stopped there is because Hendricks never stopped going for a takedown. Now, when you look at Johnny Hendricks, you got to realize something. Johnny has the ability to keep fighting when he's no longer coherent. Johnny has been fighting and wrestling his entire life. I'd venture that if you went up and hit this man with a steel chair when he wasn't looking, he'd immediately just explode into a double leg, even if he was pretty much knocked unconscious, because that's what Johnny Hendricks does. It comes
exactly.
down, yeah. It comes down
to
a
natural reaction,
right?
From a skilled wrestler. It's a natural reaction.
Here's the justification of the stoppage. A fighter must always intelligently defend themselves, and there becomes a point where Johnny Hendricks, even if he's still pressing forward, isn't really defending himself. He's just doing what instinct says for him to do. John McCarthy made the call. It was a good call. I guess he's no longer a Borrachinha. Get out the eraser. But the Brazilian's here to stay.
Yes. He likes his name, the Eraser, and he's going to keep that. So I'm looking forward to seeing him coming back. Stephen Thompson and Jorge Masvidal. Thompson fought a perfect fight. Jorge came forward at a couple of points, but I think Thompson just took him out of whatever game plan he had and pretty much had his will within that fight. You go into the first championship bout, Rose Namajunas, a 5-1, I think at the end an 8-1 underdog when the fight started, if I'm not mistaken. Joanna Jedrzejczyk, the force to be reckoned with, and she never got a chance to set herself, Joanna that is, Rose never gave her a chance to set herself to plant those jabs and crosses and front kicks and create that distance, because once Joanna does that, it's a long night for any opponent she has. And Rose moved perfectly, the way she angled her body, and we all know what we saw, and it literally shocked the world. My jaw, I think I was even worse, my jaw on the floor, than Jose Aldo when Conor McGregor knocked him out in seconds. I was like, oh my Lord, I didn't believe that was going to happen, and it did. And more power to Rose. Then TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt, you mentioned it yourself. Love introducing TJ, as always, and Cody. And my best wishes and everything go out to the champions who lost Saturday night, as well as the people who became champions, whether again or for the first time Saturday night, because they all put their blood, sweat, and tears on the line, and they put on a show. Not just them, but everybody else in that card.
Hey, can I just say this? Real quick, before we get to Bisping, when it comes to champions Dillashaw and Jedrzejczyk, I still call them champions because you can never take what they accomplished away from them. And TJ said it best about Cody. They're not done. They will dance again. And for Joanna Jedrzejczyk, I don't know if she'll get an immediate rematch. She very well could, but it is very short-sighted to say that woman will never wear gold again, or at least vie for gold again. She is truly one of the best 115-pounders in the world. And both Cody and Joanna, having lost for the first time on Saturday night, I guarantee you that this loss will make them better fighters going forward.
No question, because true champions become better through their losses. It's like in business. You don't know what it's like to truly succeed, until you've lost or failed, as they say in business. In this case, it's not failure, it's a loss. And it's how they deal with it their first time out. Joanna's an undefeated champion who not only lost her championship status and her belt, she suffered her first loss. And then we had the situation the same with Cody Garbrandt. Now, suffering what he suffered in respect to losing his belt on Saturday night. Mental strength is the key factor here. I see Joanna coming back like a real trooper, stronger than ever. Love to see a rematch. I don't know what other fight would be warranted for Joanna in the strawweight division, but it would be great to see her, and maybe there's a clause in her contract, so we'll see how that turns out. Michael Bisping and George St. Pierre, I think George St. Pierre truly cinched, being the GOAT or the greatest of all time Saturday night. That fight, people can say in the past, TJ, everybody says, not everybody rather, people have a tendency to say, oh, George, he's boring, he's this. There wasn't any boredom Saturday night. And whether it was Freddie Roach's tutelage, over the last 8 weeks, or whether it was just George coming back, after 4 years and knowing what he needs to do, face bloodied, nose cut, head cut, easily 10 to 15 stitches are going to be needed for each of those cuts.
Yep.
And coming back and winning. And Michael Bisping, the true warrior, is taking the choke. The choke. And goes to sleep. This night was so dramatic. I'm still like, listen to me. I'm excited talking about it.
You should be. You should be. I mean, listening to the commentary, Daniel Cormier could hardly make it through the night's broadcast, and I didn't blame him. Looking at George St. Pierre and the naysayers, Bruce, that say, oh, GSP is boring, it is never boring when you walk away with your hand raised. It is never boring when you make hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars being the greatest of all time. And this is where you mentioned that GSP may have cinched it. I agree with you. You know what the best part is about George St. Pierre walking away with his hand raised and walking away with another career-defining victory? We're recording this on Monday. This is going to air later in the week. I don't have to worry about George St. Pierre testing positive for cocaine in the meantime. I don't have to worry about George St. Pierre doing something that is going to make him go from, hero to zero overnight. George St. Pierre is a consummate professional in and outside of the cage, and I struggle, Bruce. I struggle finding another man that is as successful as George in mixed martial arts and carries himself as such outside of the cage to where he isn't truly not just one of the best mixed martial artists of all time, but one of the best professional athletes. He is the total package and someone that I admire in so many different ways.
I agree with you, and I'm going to make a point. Absolutely, on everything you just said, I agree. But what we have here is now we have three people. I'm not saying anything about the people who lost, okay? Because Joanna's very humble in her own way, even though she's very vocal and domineering leading up to the fight.
On that point, Bruce, can you co-sign with me? Joanna talks a lot of smack sometimes, I think, because she needs to challenge herself. She's like a Diaz brother in that way. If a lot of people think that there's not much of a challenge there, she will make that person into a challenge, and she does that by tearing them apart vocally.
Absolutely. And, even on the day before she was on she was on Kelly Ripa and Ryan Seacrest. She was adorable. I love that. She was adorable on that show. It was the way our champions should, be representative of the UFC. What we have now, we have three new champions that share one word between all of them beautifully. It's called, and I'm going to say this, for the way they acted in their interviews and everything, it's called being humble.
Yeah. We
have three champions. George St. Pierre reminds me of the way Randy Couture always handled himself. The humbleness, the humbleness supporting the greatness. Because in order to be great, I believe you need to be humble to a degree.
Right.
And that's what we have here. George St. Pierre is an ultimate gentleman. You'd never hear him curse. And if you do, it's very rare. Or maybe he's forced to. I love the way he carries himself. Rose, my gosh, you talk about a cool cat. I think that's going to be a nickname. Thug Rose. I think it's Cool Cat Rose Namajunas. Cool cat. With that warrior Joanna in her face, with fists of Joanna in her face, with verbal assault in her face, and just standing there as cool as she was, the entertainment value of the show was far beyond just the night. It was the lead up. I loved every moment of it.
Right. If back to George St. Pierre for a second, if Randy Couture is Captain America, then George St. Pierre surely is Captain Canada. And
no question.
He represented himself so well, and I don't know what's next for him. Part of me, I don't want to see George walk away. Don't get me wrong when I say this, but part of me thinks that it's such a storybook ending if he were to call it a career at this point, to come back 4 years off, be hurt badly in the fight, cut up, bloody, looking like he truly wasn't the middleweight that, you need to be, the size of a middleweight that you need to be victorious, and for him to come back and win and choke out Michael Bisping, who, has the heart of a champion, heart of a warrior. And also, too, Mike said a lot of stuff, a lot of disparaging stuff. And what did he do? He got up. He took the loss like a man. He congratulated George. I can't wait to see Bisping moving forward. Part of me thinks that Bisping should walk away, too, but it's hard for me not to just love Mike because the way he handles himself, win or lose. Yeah, he'll make you want to shut him up. He'll make you dislike what he says. But when you realize that it's all for the betterment of the business in his upcoming fight, Michael Bisping is the total package as well.
Yes, he is. And, the money is so huge for both of them right now. I mean, they both made millions on Saturday night. Dana coming out and saying, if I'm not mistaken, that we broke 1 million pay-per-view buys, which I would hope we would have with this show, that the UFC's had a grand year when you put it all together with everything that's happened in all their areas and streamlines of income and revenue coming into the company. So Bisping is making a lot of money. He's a warrior. I don't see him stopping. He's so entertaining. Here's my thing with GSP. Yes, he came in maybe not as big as a middleweight, but the bottom line is they both weighed 184.5 pounds on weigh-in day. Whatever happened after that day is the night of the fight. But that means he was a middleweight. So he went in there and did his thing. My dream, yes, I would have no problem with George St. Pierre retiring after Saturday night, as he retired 4 years ago at the top of his game and a world champion. But I have a dream. I don't mean to sound like Martin Luther King, but I do have a dream when it comes to my dream fights in MMA, in the UFC. Anderson Silva is fighting in Shanghai, China in a couple weeks, He wins. Let's say he wins, gets through his opponent. The dream fight for me is super fight of all time, and people could say Conor and GSP. Okay, that's nice, and that's incredible to think about also.
No.
I still would love to see Anderson Silva and George St. Pierre fight at middleweight, if it's at all possible for Anderson, coming in at middleweight, doing the number, and I guarantee that would be one of the biggest pay-per-views of all time.
I agree.
Followed by a great card.
I agree wholeheartedly, but the bottom line is George St. Pierre is the middleweight champion. Anderson Silva, I don't believe, deserves a middleweight title shot right now, even if he does beat Gastelum. Yeah. But I'm with you. I mean, if I'm playing...
What about a catch weight? What about a catch weight of 195?
Yeah, 190? But you're asking George to even put on more weight. You can't ask George to put on more weight.
Why did the way George works, as powerful he looked, even at 185, he could fight at 195 and still make a showing. He's just that good.
Yeah, but he's not a middleweight. He's not. I mean, yes, he made middleweight.
I called it fantasy, TJ. It's a fantasy.
No, I'm with you.
It's a fantasy fight. I would love to see.
But for me, George St. Pierre should vacate the middleweight championship. Robert Whittaker becomes your undisputed middleweight king. Have him fight whomever. GSP should fight Anderson Silva, or GSP should walk away. I don't want to see him fight Conor McGregor. I want to see George fight Anderson Silva and be done with it, or George can just be done with it because he has nothing left to prove.
Agreed. So we're both kind of on the same level, what we're saying. And again, we're not the powers that be, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what works out. It's something more to look forward to.
I mean, maybe I'm a weirdo, Bruce.